The Defiant, a sleek human starship, drifted silently into the Vorlix system, its crew unaware of the looming danger. The Vorlix were a race unlike any other, an advanced species with a terrifying reputation. For decades, they had spread fear across the galaxy, leaving a trail of decimated civilizations behind them. Their weapons, however, weren't technological. They wielded something far more deadly: biological warfare. Their homeworld's atmosphere was laced with toxins, a poison so potent that no species had ever survived contact with it, except for the Vorlix themselves. To the Vorlix, the universe was their hunting ground, and they were the unstoppable predators. They believed their poison was the perfect weapon, a means to conquer anyone and everyone without lifting a finger. But now, the crew of the Defiant was about to face a challenge that would shake their beliefs to the core. Captain Elysia Grant stood at the helm, gazing out of the ship's viewports as the swirling green atmosphere of the Vorlix homeworld loomed closer. The mission was diplomatic, a desperate attempt to form an alliance with the Vorlix. Earth and its colonies had been struggling, and the Vorlix, despite their ruthless nature, held the keys to peace, or so it seemed. But as the ship descended into the poison-laden skies, a creeping unease filled the crew. Every precaution had been taken. The Defiant's air filtration systems hummed, ensuring that no toxins would seep into the ship. Yet, the moment they touched, down on the Vorlix world, the weight of their atmosphere pressed against them, a silent warning that was impossible to ignore. The crew's suits filtered the air, keeping them safe, but a subtle discomfort lingered in their chests. Something they couldn't quite shake. The air itself felt alive with danger. Upon landing, the Vorlix representatives awaited them. Their appearance was just as alien as their reputation. Tall, imposing figures whose skin shimmered with an unnatural, otherworldly hue. There was no warmth in their greetings, only cold, calculating eyes that watched the humans with a strange kind of amusement. The Vorlix had hosted visitors before, and each time the outcome had been the same. The invaders, the desperate survivors, were always brought to their knees by the poison in the air. But this time, something felt different. Captain Grant could sense it in the air. Their confidence was different, almost too much. The Vorlix believed they had already won, and they hadn't even started negotiating yet. They invited the humans to share a ceremonial drink, a custom that had always been a prelude to destruction. The glass in their hands glimmered with a strange, iridescent liquid, swirling like liquid death. It was a signal. To drink was to accept their fate. With a calm, steady hand, Captain Grant took the glass. She had no intention of letting fear control her, not now, not when everything was at stake. The Vorlix observed her closely, eager to see how the humans would respond to the poison that had wiped out countless species before them. As she raised the glass to her lips, the Vorlix leader's gaze intensified, like a predator savoring its prey. There was something almost unsettling in their quiet anticipation. The moment the liquid touched her tongue, Captain Grant felt an immediate heat, a burning sensation that spread through her throat, searing her insides. She couldn't help but wince, but her resolve never faltered. It was the first step in a dangerous game. The Vorlix believed their poison was unbeatable, something that no one could survive. But the captain's mind raced, and a spark of something primal ignited within her. She had known the risks of this mission, and she refused to let herself or her crew become another victim of the Vorlix's arrogance. As she fought the creeping nausea, her eyes locked with the Vorlix leader's. His smirk was wide, but it was tinged with a flicker of doubt. For a moment, Captain Grant could sense it, a crack in their arrogance. They had underestimated her. The poison was meant to paralyze their enemies, to bring them to the brink of death within moments. But she wasn't like any species they had encountered before. She wasn't going to fall so easily. Yet, as the toxins began their work on the others, and they collapsed one by one, it was clear. The Defiant's crew was in grave danger. The Vorliks may have thought their poison was unbeatable, but they were wrong. The battle for survival had only just begun. The moment the crew of the Defiant swallowed the toxic beverage, the effects were immediate. The liquid was no mere drink. It was a poison, carefully crafted by the Vorliks to obliterate any species that dared to enter their domain. Captain Grant's vision blurred as the toxins began to invade her bloodstream, sending waves of nausea crashing through her body. Her head spun, and her muscles screamed with weakness as the poison attacked from within. The crew, unaware of the true power of the Vorlik's poison, started to collapse one by one, their bodies seizing uncontrollably. It was a terrifying sight. Lieutenant Rhodes, a strong and skilled officer, was the first to fall, his face contorting in agony as the poison began to take hold. Next, Ensign Harper dropped to her knees, her breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. The poison was working, faster than anyone could have expected, paralyzing their bodies and shutting down their systems with terrifying precision. Soon the crew was littered across the floor, twitching and convulsing as they fought to stay alive, their lives slipping further out of reach. The Vorlik's leaders watched the chaos unfold before them, their cold eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The aliens knew the outcome before it even began. For centuries, their poison had proved to be the perfect weapon, something no species had ever survived. They had wiped out entire civilizations with this very toxin. In their minds, this was just another victory, another confirmation of their superiority. They sneered as they looked at the humans who were now writhing in agony. "You are weak," the Vorlik's leader Vorthak muttered to himself, his voice barely above a whisper. "Just like the others." But then, something unexpected happened. Captain Grant, despite the poison ravaging her body, remained on her feet. Her hands shook, her body trembling as the toxin began its assault, but she refused to fall. It would have been easy to surrender to the poison, to allow herself to succumb, but she fought with every ounce of willpower. Her breath came in shallow, ragged gasps, and her skin burned as the toxin coursed through her veins, but she stood, tall, refusing to show weakness. The Vorliks watched in disbelief. No species had ever resisted their poison for more than a few seconds. The fact that Captain Grant was still standing was an anomaly they couldn't explain. It was as if her body was rejecting the poison, pushing it back in ways that made no logical sense. Her mind was racing, her thoughts sharp despite the growing haze in her vision. She knew she couldn't let herself falter. Not now. Not when her crew's lives hung in the balance. Her body screamed in protest, but she ignored it. Every breath was a battle, every heartbeat a challenge. Her hands trembled, but her grip on the glass of the poison remained firm. She clenched her teeth, focusing all of her energy on staying conscious, on keeping herself upright. The Vorliks had underestimated her, and now they were witnessing something they couldn't comprehend. The captain wasn't just a human, she was something more. Her body, her will, was doing what no other species had ever been able to do. Resist, as the toxin continued to take its toll on the others. Captain Grant's mind raced, searching for a way to fight back. She had no idea why her body was responding differently, but she wasn't going to waste the opportunity. Slowly, she closed her eyes for a moment, focusing on the rhythm of her breathing. The poison was trying to overwhelm her, but she could feel something deep inside her, a strength she hadn't realized she possessed. She began to center herself, drawing on everything she had learned throughout her career. Her training, her survival instincts, everything she had been taught was now coming into play. Her body was fighting back, and she was going to help it. As the poison spread through her bloodstream, she could feel it pushing against her body, trying to shut down her systems. But she fought it, slowly gaining control. The Vorliks, who had once been so confident in their victory, were now starting to feel that uneasy shift in the air. They had no idea what was happening, but they could sense that something was wrong. Their perfect weapon was no longer working the way it should. Captain Grant wasn't just surviving. It was as if her body was adapting, evolving, finding a way to push the poison out. The Vorlix leader, Vorthak, stepped forward, his eyes narrowing in disbelief. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice filled with a mix of confusion and anger. "This shouldn't be happening." But it was happening. Captain Grant, despite everything, was defying the very thing that was supposed to destroy her. And in that moment, the Vorlix realized they had made a terrible mistake. Humanity was not as weak as they had assumed. It was just beginning. The Vorlix were used to victory. For centuries, they had perfected their poison, honing it with scientific precision to eradicate any species that dared enter their domain. Each time, the toxin had performed as expected, overpowering and unstoppable. It was their greatest weapon, one that had never failed them. But now, standing before them, was a human who defied everything they knew. Captain Elysia Grant, though visibly weakened, remained standing, her body trembling, her mind fighting back the tide of poison that sought to overwhelm her. The rest of the crew was already slipping into unconsciousness, their bodies racked with spasms as the toxin took its toll. It was supposed to be a quick victory, a demonstration of the Vorlix's superiority. Yet something was happening that none of them had prepared for. The human refused to fall. The Vorlix looked on in stunned silence, their eyes widening as Captain Grant's resistance continued. It was incomprehensible to them. They had witnessed entire civilizations crumble to dust under the weight of their toxin. Yet here stood a human, fighting, struggling, but refusing to yield. Her breath came in jagged, shallow bursts, her body shaking with effort, but her eyes were sharp with resolve. She fell to her knees, unable to stand any longer, but even as her body betrayed her, her mind refused to surrender. Each moment she endured only deepened the Vorlix's confusion. They had never encountered anything like this before. Vorthak, the leader of the Vorlix, stood motionless, watching with a mixture of disbelief and growing frustration. "How?" he whispered under his breath, his voice barely audible to his own soldiers. His gaze never left Captain Grant. She was an anomaly, an enigma. How was this possible? The poison they had designed, refined and perfected, was supposed to be a death sentence for any being that encountered it. Yet here she was, a human, defying the very thing that had brought the strongest species to their knees. The Vorlix had made sure the toxin was indiscriminate, universal in its effectiveness. But this human, she was different. The tension in the room grew palpable as the seconds dragged on. The Vorlix soldiers exchanged nervous glances, their confidence beginning to waver. They were witnesses to something unprecedented. Captain Grant's body might be weak, her muscles trembling under the strain, but her will was unbreakable. Slowly, she closed her eyes, focusing all her energy, drawing upon every mental and physical discipline she had ever mastered. She had been trained for situations like this, though she had never imagined facing a challenge quite like this. Her mind raced through memories of survival tactics, of facing impossible odds and emerging victorious. She had seen soldiers fall, but she had never witnessed one give up, not as long as there was a breath left in them. With every ounce of strength she could muster, Captain Grant refused to let the poison take her. She could feel it trying to spread through her body, threatening to cripple her, but she fought back. She willed her body to adapt, to rise above the toxin, and slowly, almost imperceptibly, her shaking hands steadied. Her breathing, once labored and erratic, began to even out. The pain didn't subside, but her focus sharpened, and with it came a surprising burst of strength. For the first time, she realized something remarkable. The poison wasn't just attacking her, it was testing her. It was pushing her limits, but she was pushing back. As she continued to struggle, The Vorlich scientists observed her with a mixture of fascination and confusion. They had never seen anything like this before. Their own species would have been long dead by now. Yet here she was, still fighting, still refusing to give in. "This cannot be," one of the scientists murmured, their voice trembling with shock. "She should have collapsed by now. The toxin is too powerful." Vorthak, however, saw an opportunity. He didn't understand what was happening, but he saw a chance to learn something new, something valuable. "Study her," he commanded, coldly, turning to his scientific team. "Analyze every detail. This human's resilience is unprecedented. We will understand why she survives, and then we will use it against her." Captain Grant, though exhausted, could hear them speaking. She didn't have the strength to respond, but she wasn't afraid. This was her chance, the one thing she had never given up on in all her years of service: survival. She had no idea how she was withstanding the poison, but she knew one thing. If she could hold on just a little longer, if she could stay conscious, just long enough, she might be able to turn the tables. The Vorlichs had underestimated humanity, and they would learn soon enough that this was a mistake they would never make again. With her resolve burning brighter than ever, Captain Grant's mind locked onto a single thought. She would not give up. Not while her crew needed her. Not while there was still a chance to win. The battle was just beginning. The poison continued to surge through Captain Elysia Grant's veins, its effects ruthless and fast-acting. Every breath felt like it might be her last, and the pain was unbearable. Yet amidst the chaos of her failing body, something remarkable began to unfold. For a fleeting moment, the poison seemed to slow, almost as if the very toxin had encountered resistance. Grant's mind, though clouded and on the edge of unconsciousness, began to make an unexpected connection. Her DNA was reacting with the poison in ways the Vorlichs could never have anticipated. Rather than simply succumbing, her body's genetic code appeared to be adapting, responding to the toxins like a defense mechanism long buried in her biology. As the poison tried to invade her systems, Grant's cells fought back, activating genetic defenses that no other species had ever unlocked before. Her body seemed to be rewriting the rules, turning the very poison into something it had never been, a challenge to its perfection. Her heart raced faster, pumping blood more efficiently as if trying to flush the toxin out, and every breath, though shallow, carried a strength she hadn't known was possible. In the stunned silence of the room, the Vorlich scientists looked on in disbelief. This was not part of their calculations, not even close. The toxin was supposed to shut down any creature it encountered, forcing it into paralysis and death. The Vorlichs had perfected the weapon to a degree that nothing could withstand it, not even their own race. Yet, here was a human, fighting back in a way that was entirely alien to them. Their eyes flicked from Grant to each other, exchanging looks of confusion. This wasn't just an anomaly. It was something far deeper. They had assumed humans were fragile, weak creatures, easy prey to their superior poison. Yet Captain Grant was proving them wrong with every passing second. Her body was not only enduring the toxin, it was fighting it, adapting to it. Something in her genetic makeup was turning the tide. Captain Grant, though still struggling to stay conscious, sensed the change in her body. Her mind, sharp despite the fog of the poison, latched onto the realization. This was it. This was the key. Her survival wasn't just a fluke. It was evidence of something far greater. Humanity had a resilience, a hidden power embedded deep within their biology that no one had ever considered before. The Vorlichs might have perfected their weapon of destruction, but they had overlooked one crucial factor. Humans were adaptable. Captain Grant's heart surged with determination. If she could survive this, if her body could unlock this resistance, then the same could be true for the rest of humanity. The galaxy did not need to cower in fear of the Vorlix any longer. This was the beginning of something far greater, a new hope for the universe. The toxic haze that had clouded her thoughts began to lift as her body fought to reverse the damage. Slowly, her breathing steadied. Her chest, which had once felt like it was being crushed under the weight of the poison, now expanded with more ease. The tension in her muscles loosened, the convulsions subsiding. Her body wasn't just holding on, it was pushing the poison out, flushing it from her system. Her pulse, which had been erratic and racing, began to return to a more normal rhythm. She wasn't just surviving, she was winning. The poison that had once seemed unbeatable was now being undone by her own body's resilience. But as the captain's strength returned, the Vorlix remained skeptical. They had witnessed this strange resistance, but they could not bring themselves to believe it was anything more than an anomaly, an unusual quirk of one human's biology. Vorthak, the leader of the Vorlix, watched with narrowed eyes, his mind racing. Was this truly possible? The Vorlix had perfected everything, including the poison. It had been flawless for centuries. There was no logical explanation for how a human could withstand it, much less survive. But the evidence was undeniable. Captain Grant's body was slowly but surely fighting back in a way they had never seen before. Yet, to the Vorlix, it was still a one-time event. It couldn't be replicated. Humanity, in their eyes, was still too weak, too fragile to be a true threat. However, the seeds of doubt had already been planted in the Vorlix's minds. This human had not only survived, they had adapted. And in that moment, Captain Grant realized that the war for humanity's survival had just shifted. The poison that had been their greatest weapon was no longer their greatest advantage. Humanity's hidden strength had been revealed, and now the galaxy's fate hung in the balance. It wasn't just about resisting the poison anymore. It was about survival, defiance, and the beginning of a rebellion that the Vorlix had never seen coming. Captain Grant's victory was only the beginning. As the life signs of her crew flickered weakly on the monitors, Captain Alicia Grant knew time was running out. Her body was still recovering from the effects of the poison, but she had no illusions that it would be long before the Vorlix decided to finish what they had started. Her crew, weakened and unconscious, needed her. The ship, the Defiant, was nearly out of power, but she had one last chance to make a difference. With every ounce of strength left in her, Captain Grant crawled to the ship's communications console. Her hands trembled as she worked the controls, trying to send a message to Earth, a message that could save humanity, that could warn her people about the Vorlix threat. It was a long shot. The Vorlix would be onto her the moment they realized what she was doing, but she had no other option. With a final push, she accessed the ship's communication systems, using what little power remained to send out a distress signal. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a moment, her mind racing with 1,000 thoughts. The crew needed help, but beyond that, humanity needed to know what the Vorlix were capable of. The galaxy needed to understand that the Vorlix were not just conquerors. They were destroyers, wielding a poison that could wipe out entire species. There was no time to explain everything, no time for a detailed report. Instead, Captain Grant sent a simple message, one of defiance, one that carried the heart of humanity's spirit. "We are humanity. We endure." The words echoed through the stillness of the ship, a declaration that humanity would not be crushed. Not by the Vorlix, not by anyone. Even if she and her crew fell here, the message would live on. It would reach Earth. And if she had her way, it would ignite the spark of resistance across the galaxy. The message wasn't just for Earth. It was a rallying cry for every civilization that had ever fallen under the Vorlix's shadow. The poison had failed, and humanity would endure. But the Vorlix were not far behind. As the transmission sent out into the vastness of space, The Vorlix's sensors began to pick up on the signal. The moment they realized what Captain Grant had done, fury surged through them. The perfect weapon they had designed, flawless in its design and deadly in its purpose, had failed. Worse yet, the very thing they had kept secret for centuries had just been exposed to the rest of the galaxy. The Vorlix had prided themselves on their superiority, on their ability to wipe out any species with ease. But now, their greatest strength, the poison that had been their ultimate weapon, had been shown to be ineffective. The Vorlix couldn't tolerate such a failure. Vorthak, the Vorlix leader, turned sharply to his commanders. His anger was palpable, his eyes burning with fury. "She did it! The human sent a message," he growled, barely able to control his rage. "They know. The galaxy knows what we are capable of." His voice was low, threatening. "Prepare the fleet. We will silence this message. We will crush them all." The Vorlix began to mobilize, preparing for a counterattack that would not only destroy the Defiant, but eradicate any trace of the human resistance. The arrogance of their previous belief that the humans were no threat now turned to cold, calculated revenge. They would not let this rebellion go unpunished. But Captain Grant, though physically drained and surrounded by the carnage of her crew's collapse, was not done. She knew the Vorlix would retaliate, that they would come for her ship with a vengeance. But she had one more trick up her sleeve. She had sent the message, yes, but she had also planted a virus within the Vorlix's communication system, a virus that would buy Earth time, a virus that would scramble their fleets and their tactics. It wasn't much, but it was enough. It would slow them down, give Earth a fighting chance. It was a small victory, but one that could mean the difference between survival and extinction. As the Vorlix prepared their counterstrike, Captain Grant's eyes, though heavy with exhaustion, glowed with a quiet resolve. She had given humanity a chance. Her message had been sent. Her people would know the truth. And though she had no way of knowing how long she had left, she would not go down quietly. The Vorlix had underestimated humanity once, and now they would pay the price for that mistake. The battle for survival had only just begun. As the Vorlix prepared to unleash their full might upon the Defiant, the odds seemed stacked against humanity. The poison had failed, but the Vorlix still possessed overwhelming technological and biological superiority. They had destroyed countless civilizations before, and now they were determined to finish what they had started with Captain Grant's crew. The atmosphere in the command center of the Defiant was heavy with the weight of inevitable defeat. But just as the Vorlix fleet powered up their weapons, a change rippled through the space around them. Unexpected, powerful, and relentless. One by one, the remaining human crew members began to stir. Captain Grant, though still weak, had sparked something in them. Her message had spread across the galaxy, igniting a fire of defiance in the heart of every human who heard it. The power of that message reverberated through the distant colonies, reaching those who had long feared the Vorlix's grip on the galaxy. Within moments, reinforcements began arriving from nearby human colonies. The hum of energy pulsed through. The Defiant as emergency power surged back into the ship. Captain Grant had given her crew a chance, and now, thanks to Earth's swift response, humanity was about to deliver a blow the Vorlix had never seen coming. Led by Admiral Rachel Shaw, a formidable strategist and respected leader, the human fleet surged into the Vorlix system. As the ships appeared out of the vast emptiness of space, the Vorlix were caught off guard. The sudden arrival of the human fleet, with its advanced technology and highly coordinated maneuvers, sent shockwaves through the Vorlix forces. The Vorlix had believed themselves to be untouchable, their biological weaponry the trump card in their conquests, but they had never anticipated the strategic brilliance of the human fleet. As the two forces collided in the black expanse of space, the Vorlix quickly realized they were outmatched. Admiral Shaw, known for her tactical ingenuity, commanded her fleet with precision. The Vorlix's vast superiority in terms of firepower and biological weaponry mattered little in the face of human adaptability. Shaw's forces moved with a fluidity and speed that baffled the Vorlix. While the Vorlix relied on their strength, humanity's strength lay in their ability to think, adapt, and innovate on the fly. The Vorlix had created a perfect weapon, but they had failed to consider that humanity would find a way to fight back, not just with brute force, but with intelligence and cunning. Humanity's warships, equipped with the latest advancements in shielding and weaponry, danced around the Vorlix's heavy artillery. The Defiant joined the fray, her weakened systems now fully recharged, her crew back on their feet. Together, the human ships wove a strategy of surprise and deception, pulling the Vorlix into traps they had not anticipated. Every maneuver was calculated, designed to exploit the weaknesses of the Vorlix's overconfidence. The Vorlix, whose biological superiority had once made them feel invincible, now found themselves losing ground with every passing moment. The tide of the battle was shifting, and it was shifting fast. Captain Grant, though exhausted and still recovering, watched from the Defiant's command center as the human fleet engaged the Vorlix in full force. Her heart raced with a mixture of pride and relief. The battle was far from over, but humanity had proven something far more important. It was not their weapons that made them strong, but their resilience, their creativity, and their ability to adapt to any challenge. The Vorlix had underestimated humanity's strategic brilliance, thinking that their physical superiority would ensure victory. They had failed to consider the power of human ingenuity, the unpredictability that came with the human mind. The Vorlix, stunned and scrambling to adjust, began to realize that their empire was not as unshakable as they had believed. Their forces were falling apart, their biological weapons rendered useless by human innovation. The Vorlix fleet's once dominant position in the galaxy was now in jeopardy, their advanced weaponry failing against a force they had dismissed as insignificant. The human fleet pressed on, outmaneuvering them at every turn. The battle raged, and with each passing moment, it became clearer to the Vorlix. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They had made a grave mistake in thinking their poison was the end of the story. As the human fleet closed in on the Vorlix flagship, the final remnants of their arrogance began to crumble. The tide had truly turned. Humanity had not only survived, they had adapted and evolved, showing the Vorlix that in the face of overwhelming odds, they would endure. The galaxy had witnessed the beginning of a new era, one where humanity would no longer bow to the Vorlix or anyone else. The Vorlix might have had the power to destroy, but humanity had the power to rise, to resist, and to turn the tide of history in their favor. The final battle unfolded on the Vorlix homeworld, a planet cloaked in the silence of an empire that once believed itself invincible. The sky above the barren surface churned with the thunderous clash of ships, the stars flickering as human and Vorlix forces engaged in a desperate struggle. The Vorlix, ever proud of their dominance, had dug in for one last stand, thinking that their advanced weapons and biological superiority would turn the tide in their favor. But the humans, led by the unshakable Captain Grant, had different plans. They didn't come to conquer, they came to survive, to protect their colonies, and to show the galaxy that humanity would not bow to anyone, not even the mighty Vorlix. The battle on the ground was brutal. The Vorlix deployed their deadliest tactics, using their poisons and biological weapons to push the humans back. But what the Vorlix failed to understand was that humanity's strength was not just in their weapons, it was in their unyielding spirit. The poison that once ravaged the human crew was now nothing more than a challenge to overcome. The human forces, bolstered by their ability to resist and adapt to the toxins, fought with a ferocity that the Vorlix had never encountered before. With every step, the Vorlix found themselves outgunned, outclassed, and unable to match the ingenuity and resilience of the human forces. The once unstoppable Vorlix were now being pushed back, their superiority slipping through their fingers as humanity's tactical brilliance proved to be their greatest weapon. On the surface of the planet, Captain Grant stood at the forefront of the battle, leading her soldiers through the smoke and chaos. Her mind was sharp, focused on the final objective, ending the Vorlik's threat once and for all. The ground trembled as human forces stormed forward, taking advantage of the Vorlik's weakening defenses. The Vorliks had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, and now they were paying the price. Every strike from the human forces carried the weight of survival. This wasn't just a fight for victory, it was a fight for the future of the galaxy, for the freedom of every species the Vorliks had ever threatened. In the midst of the chaos, Captain Grant found herself face to face with Vorthak, the leader of the Vorliks, standing on the war-torn surface of his own planet. The Vorliks' leader sneered at her, his arrogance still palpable despite the growing devastation around him. He raised his hand, and once again, the poison that had nearly destroyed her was unleashed in an attempt to finish the job. But this time, Captain Grant was ready. The poison, though potent, was no longer the fearsome weapon it once was. With the lessons learned from her first encounter, she had found a way to neutralize it. Her breath steady, she moved with precision, using a simple, yet effective technique she had perfected during her recovery. In one swift motion, she activated the device in her suit that countered the poison's effects, dispersing the toxins in the air around her and neutralizing their potency. Vorthak, shocked and furious, watched as his most powerful weapon was rendered useless before his eyes. For the first time, the Vorlik's leader saw what true resistance looked like. Captain Grant stood before him, unbowed, her determination burning brighter than ever. The realization hit him like a blow to the chest. His empire was crumbling, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The final blow came swiftly. With a sharp, precise movement, Captain Grant took control of the situation, disarming Vorthak and forcing him into submission. The Vorlik's leader, once so confident in his superiority, was now a defeated and broken figure. The Vorlik's empire, which had terrorized the galaxy for so long, was no more. The humans had shown that no matter the poison, no matter the odds, they would not be defeated. As the battle came to an end, the remaining Vorlik's forces surrendered, their empire collapsing under the weight of its own arrogance. Humanity stood victorious, not through the destruction of their enemies, but through their refusal to yield. The message was clear, echoing across the stars. Humanity was a species to be reckoned with. They were not just survivors. They were resilient, adaptable, and unbreakable. And as the galaxy looked on, they saw for the first time what true strength looked like. The Vorliks might have had the poison, but humanity had the will to overcome. The galaxy had just witnessed the birth of a new power, one that would change the course of history forever.